I have the opening positions here at Lutzen. See the Allies here in the foreground. Look off to the north. See the French strung out amongst the villages all the way back to Lutzen itself. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. Here we have two French divisions spread out between these two clusters of villages. The 8th here in the sort of quad cluster of the Gorsens and Rana and Ka. Then Star Sidel over there with the 10th Division. Now they're just sort of clustered right around the towns. They're not really deployed, not looking for a fight. Moving backwards, see a big cluster of French troops there. That is the 9th Division. They don't look really well deployed either. We have the cavalry brigade there, and going all the way back to Lutzen, we have the 11th Division. So that is the bulk of the French 3rd Infantry Corps. And they don't really look like they're ready to fight. Most of these setups are determined by the scenario. So like this cluster right here, that's very well defined. They start that way. The fact that the 8th is spread out amongst all these villages is also predicated by the setup. The fact that the 10th is way over here, isolated, is also part of the setup. Now, what they're looking at is a rather massive Allied army. We have 3 lines of the Allied army starting on the table. This is the first line, mainly Prussians with a little bit of Russian artillery. Shifting across, we have the second line here, Prussians in front, and then some Russians in the back. And then we have the reserve line, which is largely some cavalry, but also a nice body of guard infantry there. It's a pretty big force, and they are, clustered together, ready to move on the attack. I want to take a quick look at the terrain here now that I've covered it up with counters. Even from these positions, if the French become disordered or plus grand disorder, they have places they can go. They have the towns back here. They can effectively retreat and rally and remain on the map. But it's not so for coalition. See, everything here is totally wide open. Just open territory. Clear terrain. I mean, these are some hills, but they are not close terrain for rallying. What that means is, if these guys plus grand disorder and start retreating, there's nothing to stop them. If they don't rally, they're going to go right off this map. So that's actually a pretty interesting spot for the coalition to be in. As a player, I look at all these forces and think, big time attack, but if I'm too aggressive, I may not be able to keep them fighting and keep them on the board. Given the relatively short duration of the play we're going to undertake here, even though we're starting the beginning of the battle, actually no reinforcements will arrive for the French currently on the board. So the mass of the French army will not come to their support within the time frame that we're going to see. I'm still going to try to play as if I'm expecting that. So I'll be mindful of where these forces are to enter and try to make my moves, thinking that I'm going to try to be expecting them and supporting them. On a similar note, even though we have a large portion of the Allied army, their reserve line is largely their guard and their heavy cavalry, and we won't be seeing those reinforcements either. So those are very powerful forces. Would definitely play a big part in any full battle play, but just couldn't pass up taking a look at them because they're such nice forces to look at. Also notice that all the artillery ammunition wagons are on the game order of battle because Premier rules are not going to be using them. So my satellite reconnaissance tells me there's going to be a very large French force entering on the western map edge here. Not within the scope of my play, but I know in a few hours they'll be here. Similarly, there will be quite a few French forces coming in the north here, and to a lesser degree to the east. So deciding how to play the French is going to be influenced greatly by those things. Now looking southeast, I think I'm going to assume that the French reinforcements will be coming in here. So I'm going to try to protect this area to make sure they're able to arrive when they would come. And the fact that I have this division spread out here, I know I need to hold ground to enable my reinforcements to come up and support me. I have this giant gap in between these two divisions. I think I'm going to try to push a division in between them to hold that ground, but at the risk of keeping my very far eastern left flank here unguarded. And the reason I think I can do that is this stream here. The Flussgravern is a pretty big impediment to movement in this battle, certainly in game terms. I think I can use it to effectively control my left flank without necessarily putting any forces in this big area. Even if the Allies get here, they'll be very slow in crossing, and likely they'll be facing my reinforcements when the time actually comes. Again, I'm not going to play that far into the game, but these are the things I'm looking at in making the decisions on how I'm going to play the French. Now how about the Allies? I think the setups have more or less determined what the plan is. We have the first line here. Looks like they're going to shoot straight at this cluster of villages here. We have the second line here. It looks like they're shooting straight at the village on the west side. So it looks like maybe we can wedge our forces here to try to push them back, and also the first line to here to push them back, and maybe we can keep this big opening right here in the center. I think it'd be kind of interesting to see if I can push this large reserve line of cavalry and guard infantry right here, more or less straight up this road and then through the gap. And what's really driving my plan here is the victory conditions for the game at large. For the Allies to achieve a overwhelming victory, or decisive, whatever the level is, they have to capture territory. They need to capture these villages right in front of us, and they need to move all the way back to Lutzen in the very far corner there and capture that. I think the obvious path is away from the stream and straight up this area here. I think we can move fast with that cavalry. We can keep the French isolated and maybe defeat them in detail. I don't have the strongest Russian forces in this game, for the infantry anyway, but I still have that good Russian artillery, and the Prussian infantry is in pretty good shape. So if I were playing this long view with the full game, I would look at my reserve line, the army reserve line rather, with all the guard, as my really killing force that will come in late and finish them off. But even though I do have this numerical advantage, I don't necessarily like my position on the field. I don't like having all this clear space behind me. I'm at a real risk of losing units to retreating off the map So I'm going to have to make sure I protect my flanks and keep a lot of leaders behind me to rally any forces that might fall back. So on the plus side, the French have virtually no cavalry. So we'll be able to harass their flanks pretty easily with our cavalry. So that's the setup and the state of things at the beginning. So now we'll just go ahead and pile right into the first turn.